Hi guys, and welcome to the latest podcast from the InConversation series with Film Ireland. I'm Mark Sheridan. This is the first podcast I'll be taking over on this side of things. And today we are talking to Noel Quinn, who is a boom op and sound person extraordinaire. Hello, Noel.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Well, how would you describe yourself?
How would I describe myself? I'm basically a sound person. So sound is still, I've been in it since 1967. I've had quite a lot of experience, mostly in feature. So basically, for me, I'm passionate about sound. I'm very, very passionate about sound. And how do we achieve that? How do we get sound on a film set? How do we get sound for a documentary, a short, whatever way you want to look at it? First of all, I think for me personally, you have to be a little bit assertive. Not over-assertive, that's not going to get you anywhere. You've got to be understanding. You've got to be aware of what goes on the set. In terms of pre-production, really important. It's lovely if you can see the locations with the director and any other crew members if needs be. How much control have we got on this location? What are we dealing with in this location? Have we got control of people around us? Have we got control of air conditioning? Have we got control of whatever? Okay. That's number one. Number two, the type of sets we're going to work in, whether it be a set exterior, and we built an interior in studio. In most of those cases, normally what would happen is that we'd have an outside door with a frame around it and one or two bricks just to give us that shot looking back into the hallway or whatever. But can you imagine if the house is up on a riser? It was a concrete floor. We have a wooden floor if it's in studio. So we have to make sure that that's padded down so it's going to sound like concrete and not sound like wood. This is getting rid of all the problems that we might have on a set. The other thing too is that, if I could just say again on pre, in terms of there's situations, or I read through a script, I'll have a quick look at it, then I want to meet the director, we'll have a chat. We always get that opportunity of meeting a director and having a chat. He or she will pass on his concerns or her concerns to me, and likewise I pass on my concerns to them. And if it's anything to do with radio mics, I am then going to go after that meeting, I'm going to go and chat to the wardrobe designer to see if they could give me any suitable clothes for that particular day, if it's one of those days that we have to use radio mics.
Yeah, I think just actually, because I want to get into a lot of that stuff, but I think what's important for people who are listening to this is, and it's what I'm hoping to be able to get through with you today, is that how you look at a film and how you see it is there's a whole different viewpoint that has to come that maybe some people aren't so used to doing. Like when they come to it, a lot of people think, how visually, how am I going to show this? What am I going to do? And they look at the sets, even when they're looking at costume and everything, they're not taking into account the effect that this has on the sound. So I actually we'll probably look at each kind of separate section from that actually and have a little chat about it, because I think there's probably some very useful advice you can actually give to people of all departments. But just before we get into that then, just in like as short as a version we can, like what was your path to sound? How did you get towards there?
How did I get into sound?
Yeah.
I was probably really lucky. I worked in the Adelphi Cinema in 1966, and I was told there was a job going out in Ardmore Studios. I didn't even know what Ardmore Studios was. I was going to become a drafts person, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. So what happened is, anyhow, I went out. Again, I met the head of the sound department. There was a John Huston film on there, Sinful Davy. And what happened is the head of the department had to go for a meeting. He said that, look, Paddy, who was the projectionist out there, will show you what you'll be using if you do get the job, which happened to be a mechanical boom with a mic on the end. That's for anybody who doesn't know what it is. It's an actual mechanical device that you can swing a microphone around the heads of people on a film set.
So kind of like a crane? Like this?
Yeah, like a crane, but it's
yeah.
Actually, you'd probably see mostly studios would have them.
Yeah,
so you'd
absolutely.
see them on often talk shows, or you would have seen them on a late, not anymore. They use poles now. But what happened was when he came back from the meeting, I happened to be on it. So he said, when can you start? So that's how I got my first job. I didn't even know interview. That was it. I was really lucky because day one, when I joined there, he actually sent me out to Glencree where John Huston was shooting at the time. So I was attached to the sound department. That was going to be my area. It was just brilliant. It was just unbelievable. I just thought, what is this? Where am I? Magic.
And had you had like any kind of interest in sound before though? Or?
No, I hadn't. No, it's
so you
funny,
discovered it there actually,
I just
sort of in practice.
I got sucked into this, you know what I mean, very, very quickly. There was 4 in the sound department at that stage. I suddenly went, oh, this is really interesting. What are they doing? What sort of microphones they had? Their own mixers that they had at that stage. And I'm one of those people, like, I love looking at electronic devices. I'm really interested in electronic devices. I think I remember my old man being really disgusted when he gave me a train set for Christmas and I took it apart to see how it worked. So, and put it back together again. So that did interest me, that sort of side of things. But also then, how do they capture sound? Because it was something I never really considered, never thought about it. Never. Again, it would have been picture and, actors and whatever else. And, this is great. And in fact, probably like a lot of people, I thought they just used one camera and just shot it as it went. We didn't cut or we didn't use multi-cameras or whatever. And it built up from there. When I finished that film, they actually sent me to the editing room, then to post-production. I was sent to every department that was in there, which was carpentry, tailoring, wardrobe department, makeup department, hairdressing, camera department. I went to every department that was there and learnt. I was 17 at the time. It was still that era, early 60s, middle 60s. I still got a few clips on the ear. To learn. But it gave me appreciation. Not only that, we had a dubbing suite. And in the dubbing suite, this is where we'd revoice. We do effects like Deliverance, for instance. We built a water tank in there, put an aluminium and a wooden boat in there. Bowman came in to Deliverance. Post-sync, revoicing. Probably the best person to revoice is Gene Wilder, where we're at it, the quickest one I've ever seen. So you're learning your trade as you go. This is to do with sound. This is what happens. This is how we revoice something. Why are we going into a dead boot? Why are we recording the sound in there and then sometimes we're recording it outside of that? If it's in a room, we're outside because there's a bit of live and a bit of reflected sounds. You go into the booth because if you're outside, there's no reflections. So you're learning as you go. Needless to say, I got involved in my own films. I mean, with the crew, I ended up being a boom swinger. And I learned very quickly on the set. And also, I never wore headphones. I didn't have a monitor. I had to learn what all the lenses were, which is great from a camera point of view. And even to this day, even if I go out on second unit on Vikings, you'll find a lot of the lads will give me a call for the lens size.
And so,
I don't ask them.
So for people who are trying to follow this, if you're a little less experienced, so I think what Noel's trying to say is, so if the cinematographer puts maybe a 50mm on the camera, which would be maybe for your medium close-ups, Noel would have a good sense of how close he can get in with that boom without having to look through the monitor, the
viewfinder.
Yeah,
exactly. It just you know what the frame is at a given distance, and I think that was a great learning tool. You can imagine eye lines. Not being in eye lines, working opposite key lights, because there's always a main source of light. We'd come in from the opposite side. I was also very lucky because I was brought up in an era that it was very hard lighting. So what would happen is that to get a boom in, they actually lit with corridors for the boom to travel down. Okay. So, but that was a communication with a DOP, and he or she would come to you. I remember, I think the first time when I was asked that I want a Charlie bar, I hadn't a clue, which is a little sliver piece of wood just to take a shadow off the edge of a light, cut down the light a bit on the edge of it. I had a little shadow in a corner or something, just to take that off. So you learn all these arts and things to do and things to control. Even just when I put on headphones then and start listening to people, how to balance out people. When you look at people on a set, who's close to camera, who's far away, who's louder, who's weaker. Can we balance out the particular mic we have? It's very simplistic in terms of sound in one sense, if you've got control, a reasonable amount of control. Basically what it comes down to, depending on the location you're in, the actors you're working with, it's then choice of microphone, and then it's placing that microphone to get the best out of that situation. I'm very old-fashioned, I'm afraid. I hate radio mics.
No, but I think that's great, because I think what I'd love to, what you were saying in Ardmore, I think you were mentioning, it's the fact that there was sort of a mutual respect between the camera department and the sound department. There's an understanding that we're all working in this together and having to accommodate each other, perhaps to some extent. Yeah,
I think this is one of the biggest. That was one of the biggest things that I learned, and that's why I was happy. I think I started in that area, because one thing is that there is a lot of teamwork. There's communication. There's a compromise in a lot of situations. But as we progressed and got into the 90s and up around the 90s, starting to get to the middle 90s, suddenly you're finding you're getting, well, this is the camera department. This is the way we're shooting, and you're saying, but hang on, we've got something. But haven't you got radio mics you can put on people? To put a radio mic on something is like saying, well, I'll put a filter in front of your camera you don't particularly like, because that's what it's like using. Radio mics control you don't control them. There's no reason why we can't light a set to be able to get a microphone in. We don't do it for fun. We try to get the best quality we can. Other things about radio mics is if you actually look at the size of a personal mic that people wear, and look at the head of it. It'll cost you about 250, 300. You'll go, okay, you pay 700 quid for some of them. But have a look at one of the other mics, a boom mic above your head. You can pay up to $5,000 for one of those. So what's going to be better quality?
There's a reason.
Yeah. And can I just, I'll
for it.
even bring that a little further. If you were to get some of the articles from MASH, because Altman shot MASH, that was the first one. And read the articles that the sound crew talked about and said, what a great idea. We can put everybody on a personal microphone. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, I can't remember. I was lucky I had the pleasure of working with him here on a film called Images, and he didn't want to use personal mics. I'm delighted. But you find after doing about 3 films like this, the sound department wrote a beautiful article about how it was so much better and quality-wise to use one mic on the set only.
But I think, and that's an interesting thing as well, though, we'll be talking about just focus, though, and discipline as well. But in the same way that if I was recording a scene with 5 cameras, I would question about whether I'd be getting 5 good cameras worth of footage. And with that one camera, would I actually getting a clearly focused, I know exactly what I'm capturing with that. And I think maybe is it something similar with sound?
Yeah, I think it's very, in sound for me, if I can relate a lot of things back to camera, because everybody seems to know how to record sound. Well, no, I shouldn't say they know how to record sound. They know how we should go about it. Oh, you could use this. Oh, you could do that. Can you not use a longer mic? My reply to that is, can we not use a longer lens and go back further when the cameras were noisy? Could we not use, look, the thing about it is that if I walk into a room and somebody says, oh, we're really sorry about this location, there's a lot of traffic here. I don't see the traffic, but I hear it. That becomes a hindrance. You can imagine. It's quite possible that may have to be revoiced. That to me is like shooting a picture out of focus. You wouldn't fancy that at all. Or you have streamers hanging down in the way all over the place. You wouldn't like that either. So that to me is really important, that you get in there. You've got to relate it back to camera because a lot of people don't understand it. And sometimes what happens is the assertiveness comes because you've got to fight. You've got to fight for sound. Listen, it's not my film. I just feel so sorry for a director where he or she has got a really good performance out there, and I can capture that performance given half a chance. Now, what I don't want to be told is, oh, well, this is how we're lighting it. I will fight up against that. Yeah. It's telling me how I should light. We can't light it any other way. Listen, I grew up with lighting. I was taught how to light. So with direct lights, we have a lot softer lights now. So to be told that I need 2 keys or I need a key right behind the camera so you can't get the boom in and they can't wash the wall. If you can't wash the wall, you can't light. Okay, yeah. There's an onus on the people to take some responsibility for things. You have to. Yeah, I think you have to. In the same way I would look at you when you're on film set and still expect you to be able to get me the audio from a certain scene. You can't just kind of go, well, I don't hold the boom that way. So, you know. Exactly. I think it's the same sort of deal. And so we have to, you know, and I mean, I've done it. I mean, I've been handed the meter a couple of times and a couple of times I've taken the meter and said, here, I lied. Because sometimes you do get annoyed at that because you feel, you know, director has given us this performance. Why aren't we capturing it? We're wasting it. We're losing it. And just to take that one little step further, sometimes what happens is sometimes you get it's like a witch hunt. You know what I mean? Somebody starts. It could be a director. It could be a first, whatever. Oh, for Christ's sake, it's sound again. Always holding the production up. You know, why are we waiting for a plane for? I need to shoot
There
now.
does tend to be an eye roll that, say, the cinematographer wouldn't get if he put his hand up.
Yeah, and what happens is it gets out of hand then. Everybody starts jumping on the bandwagon. So you really have to make a stance at that time and call it. And I'll call it as it is. I don't have a problem at all.
Well, yeah, actually, and that's it's because like our listeners will be a mixture of sound people and also film people. But I think, particularly in the kind of climate we're working on, like you've worked with, well, like as you said, you were involved in Deliverance and everything, but you've worked with Neil Jordan, Jim Sheridan, but also a lot of smaller productions as well. Oh. And the way the film industry is at the moment, particularly in Ireland, a lot of things are being made for a lot less. And I think quite often we can be very quick to blame bad sound in our films just due to a lack of budget. And I think you'd be the first person to say that's not an excuse that really flies anymore. Probably.
I think in terms of small budget films, that's for sure. It's always quite amazing that when people call up looking for sound people, you know what I mean? And sometimes because I deal with a lot of students as well, a lot of people would come through you to ring you to find out who's available. You talk, well, look, it's a feature. How many people have you got? You got 4 people, you got 4 dialogue. That's the most you're going to have at any given time. And then that'll come down to 2 at certain times. But you need a boom swinger. Oh, I don't need it. I don't want a boom swinger. Yeah, well, hang on. It's not for you to say. It's like saying again, I don't need a focus puller.
Or doing the camera.
Yeah, you're you know, nowadays with digital cameras, all you have to do is somebody to change their weight from foot to foot and they're out of focus. You know what I mean? So it's, and you don't have a focus puller, an operator would go, you know, it'll drive you mad, insane. You need one. Likewise, you need a boom operator as well. He or she knows how to get a mic in there and pull out that stuff. It's... And also the locations. You really got to see those locations. The sound person, camera person, basically all heads of department that are going to be on that shoot should really see the location you're in. And it's definitely not a location for a Sunday or a Monday. It's on a rush time. When are you going to shoot? Monday mornings. No point in going and looking at it on a Sunday morning.
So this is really, and a lot of this then comes down to prep. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we all kind of fail on, regardless of budget, actually, because I think big budget films make the same errors on that kind of thing, that it is actually... regardless of how much money you have for the actual shoot days, if you can't take that bit of time in advance and give people like yourself and your cinematographers a chance to actually feel that place, because everywhere is different, everywhere sounds different, you know.
Exactly.
And what looks or sounds fine to your ear, but certainly not to your sound person. And that's why you have them. That's why they're there on your crew. They're there to help you and enhance your film.
Exactly. It's certainly not to hinder you, that's for sure. I think you'll find us, you know, if you... We just need a little bit, like most people, as well, TLC. But no, we just need a bit of cooperation. And I think we'll give you more than what you would bargain for. I think you'd be surprised at what you hear. Can I use one example?
Go ahead,
one thing that sticks in my mind, and I could nearly name a lot of films that have the same problem. We're shooting an emotional scene. What I'm seeing the makeup is in there, dropping in stuff into the eyes, the tears are rolling down, and I'm going to talk about how much I miss her, and it sounds exactly the way I'm talking now, but I really miss you, I don't particularly want to leave you, and this is terrible. It sounds crap, basically. It's dead, it's flat. But what you're saying to a director, would you not just listen to it on headphones? You need to hear the emotional. You should actually be hearing it in the voice. You should be able to pick it. You should be able to feel it. And if you can't feel it, and I mean by that's listening to it, it's not happening. It's not going to happen for your audience.
You're right, Joe. That's the thing, because I was talking to you briefly beforehand that Rob Moore, one of your sort of proteges, shall we call him, did the sound on my first feature film. And I've had it actually before on other shorts from other good soundmen and not from the other, like the people who put the headphones on my head and actually said, have a listen. And even actually, because sometimes I might have to make a decision that, say, the noise from the traffic, we're going to live with it. But they wanted me, in the same way that the cameraman would want me to look through at the monitor, they're saying, have a listen to that, and are you sure? Because it sounds so different. You cannot, you know, especially for early first-time directors, I would say you cannot, you know, assume.
For early first-time directors, I think it's so important. I mean, even I was running a course the other day, and one of the girls said, I really want to understand more about sound. When she put on the headphones, she was picking things way ahead of me. Do you not hear that? Well, I don't. Look at it here.
But it changes your world. It focuses.
Yeah, it does. It brings your focus. And not only that, it helps us. Do you want a few tips?
No, do please.
Let's say, okay, I'm working with a director. We get on reasonably well, but what happens is I know he's on the press. Now, this is something I think is also important. You have to have a certain amount, you have to have respect, and that's number one. And also you have to have an understanding. Because if you're dealing with say, a director shooting in Europe with American money, he's be lucky to get, and it's a 6-day week shoot. He or she will be lucky to be getting 3 hours sleep a night. So what happens is they're going to be very tired because whenever they finish shooting here, goes home, America's just opened up and all the execs wants to talk about what he's just shot and what's coming up and so on and so forth. So you've got to understand there's a tremendous amount of pressure there. Also what happened the day before, we lost 2 scenes because of weather, whatever, it just got too much. So he's even under more pressure. So it's no point in you getting up there and battling his head in or knocking it in. You have to approach him with, I suppose, a certain amount of respect and say, look, we do have a problem here, but here's a way of solving it. Or, and one thing that's really, again, is really important as well. A lot of people think we don't have any knowledge of filmmaking, right? To be a sound recordist or to work in the sound department, you've got to understand editing, number one. You've got to, outside of the camera and camera lenses and sizes, the coverage. That's what editing is all about. The audio, how it's going to be laid up. So you have a solution. I go to a director sometimes and say, okay, listen, we had a bit of a problem on that line. Are you going to use a close-up on this, or are you going to leave it on that medium? No, I'm going to be definitely in a close-up. We'll move on. And again, you're giving them that option. I'm not saying, I had a problem sound-wise. We have to shoot it again.
Yeah.
I've got to just say where the problem is. It could have been one line.
It's explaining and understanding.
Exactly.
I get and I know it sounds like such an obvious thing to say, but really communication is where all this stuff seems to come down to, like.
I'm glad you mentioned communication, because I'm so disappointed in so many films how lack of communication there has been.
Yeah, and actually that's because I know I want to let you run on that one, because I think it's an important one. But I think, like you said earlier on, there's this terrible kind of tendency to the eye rolls, presuming that sound are being a little bit difficult about things. And I think what we're trying to get across here is for everyone, when you're making your films, that every single person on that set, whether they're the script continuity person, whether they're makeup, costume, whether they're sound, they are all there to try and bring their particular expertise to make the film the best. And of course, directors and cinematographers and other people have their own pressures, and that can make things tense. But everyone has to come with the understanding that you would not be saying that to me for any reason other than to try and make your film better.
Exactly. I think that's the thing. I think, it's been said so many times that there's more than just one person makes a film. And I think that's so true. And everybody's got a lot to contribute to make that film and to make it work. So, okay, at times we're all going to lose. Every one of us are going to lose at different times, depending on the pressure, the weather, whatever. You know what I mean? I heard something. I was chatting to a very good friend of mine who's a DOP there recently, and he was saying, it's funny now. He said, nowadays if I work on a shoot, I walk into a room, how much available light have I got? How much can I add to this to make it work? Whereas before we'd be starting from scratch, basically, no matter what was outside the window. So you can see where it's come to now for everybody. So there is pressure on everybody. But again, we can make this work given a little bit of time and a little bit of. I say a little bit of time, and when I mention time, it's suddenly tweaked. Okay, one thing that's really important. It doesn't solve all your problems. I don't think this is going to work for every scene when I tell you this. One thing that we have a tendency to do, I work in an area that I'm not overly well. Let's say I'm 60-70% happy with what I've got. I really like to be 80. I'd love to be 100. That's not always going to be possible. We strive for 100. So what I'll tend to do, maybe after the scene is finished, just because of the background noise, I'll pull the artist away as soon as the scene is finished, and just do a sound only of all that dialogue. Microphone roughly in the same place, but it could be around the corner where it's a little bit quieter. And what happens is the sound dubbing editor, he or she can pull out various lines and fit them in. What I hate to hear is we don't have time for that. Do it at lunchtime, but hang on, this is the first scene in the morning. It's been an emotional scene. We're going to a comedy scene before lunch. I'll never get back there. Yeah. So that's something that sticks in my thing. The other thing
particularly actually on that one though as well, because say if there's another scene happening on, there's always an element of, especially if they're moving to a different room or setup, that it's not even inconvenience feel. It's more perceived inconvenience than an actual reality.
Exactly. So give us the time. You know what I mean? We're all in the same boat. I think it's really important that we do have a block through before when we start a new scene. So what happens? A director, I would be normally in most cases, it'll happen where director will have his artist on the floor if we start at 8, let's say, and he or she will take 15 minutes with possibly their DOP, because some directors like their DOP. And what will happen is rehearse for 15 minutes, then call in the heads of department, have a look, show us what the rehearsal, and also show us the coverage. They don't say anything, it's just visually using our hands, say wide shot, medium shot, close-ups. Everybody happy, everybody's seen it, everybody's seen it, everybody disappears, okay, how long? Then the next question is, how long is it going to take to light? It's going to take an hour and a half, okay, I want the actors back on the set in less than half an hour. That's passed on to the second assistant. Artists go off. Lighting moves in, usually first, because there's lights to be put up and some of them are to be strung up on the ceiling. Health and safety nowadays. And so what happens is, and then camera comes in and moves. But sound can't walk away and go out and say, that's great, we're not going to do anything till the artists arrive back. We've got to be on the set. We watch where all lights go. Have we got problems? Can we get a boom in there? Can we solve a few shadow problems on the way? Now, what I don't expect is that if I come in late, and you've already pre-lit a room, or, I wasn't in time, they can't very well start putting out fridges again and getting up with the light, and they won't do it. Yeah. So we've got to be there. One of us has to be in that, working it out all the time, working out where the positions we come from. It's something that I'm really strong about, and that's why rehearsals are very important to me. We can't just think of position number one. We got to think of three basic positions for ourselves to work in. One, comfortable, half circle. If you like, you're putting yourself at odds. 3 or 4 people you can handle well, 2 or 3 you're going to put a strain on, and then the next one is you put a strain on to try and get everyone. Yeah. But that's part of the course. We're all in the same boat. It's not as if, oh God help me, I'm the only one doing this. There's other people doing other shit.
But it is, like, you're right, because it's taking the responsibility of your own department, and which again is what you'd expect from any department. Like when you go on set, say for the first day, because I presume the relationships are the same regardless of the budget of the film. Like, Do you go straight over to the cinematographer? Or like, how do you kind of approach those relationships?
I think in my situation, I'm one of those people anyhow. Some people I'm going to know, some people I'm not, and I'll go and introduce myself and say what I'm there for, what I do, you know what I mean? And, you know, it's like an army anyhow, or any of the forces, in that we all get on reasonably well together. Okay, we can all have bad days, we can all get tired some days, but overall we get on reasonably well. The other thing too is that I think, again, I'll take it from my own department and certainly from a boom stringer's point of view, that that's the guy that operates the mic, you can imagine on day one, shot one, an operator, he or she, are still settling a little bit. So you do a rehearsal or two, and this will go for, you know, quite a few scenes throughout the whole shoot. When you do a rehearsal or two, play a little looser. Because what happens is everybody's just feeling it. What will happen is you drop the bike in where you think roughly it should be, and what happens is everybody starts, especially nowadays with more, the boom's in, the boom's in, the boom's in. Yeah, naturally. Give it time. By the time you get to the first take, everything will be more or less swift. I guarantee you, if you get to take 3, that's it. Then you go downhill. But you can pick it at that point. The other thing I don't buy, and I you know, if there's a problem and you create it, you must call it.
Yeah.
And that's number one. Number two, if anybody else makes a mistake, they don't blame anyone else. And that's one big problem that I learned very early on when we'd no monitors, that a camera operator, he or she, wouldn't want to take the hit anymore, and you get the blame for it. So I have in the past, on 2 different occasions, I've offered to pay for the processing. Just so because I was guaranteed that the frame was wrong. And you can imagine the shit that carried initially, but after rushes, no more problems there.
It's a good lesson though to ask people to actually take ownership for this thing, because I think on a film set, and that actually goes for the director all the way down, actually, it's owning when things aren't working. It's actually being the person strong enough to actually say, okay, my bad on that one.
Exactly.
You know, and not having to do a witch hunt, because that's what I think that creates more negativity than, you know, actually just people being straight up and actually just say, my bad, let's go again.
I agree. I think that, you know, it's nice when people do stand up and say, sorry, my fault. But nowadays with monitors, everybody seems to jump on the boom's in. And so sometimes you'll find that it's, hang on, guys, did we do a reframe? Oh, sorry, we did, yeah.
Yeah, actually,
yeah.
that
so
is
it's not
something
a boom
that
in, you reframe.
Tends to happen quite a lot, actually, where the director is like sitting over the cinematographer's shoulder and they kind of just a little nudge that frame up a little bit or something like that. And the communication isn't there throughout. And actually, it was a good point when you were saying about the blocking and the rehearsal. I think there can be a lack of appreciation that, say, in that first take, the same way that the actors are finding the scene, the same way that the cameraman, especially if it's handheld, is finding that movement and motion, you know, and they're adjusting to it. The sound man is also doing that, or sound person, you know, and so in that same way, you're discovering where it is.
Yeah, how do we make this? It's like the jigsaw, putting it together. We're all trying to get it better and better and better.
So there needs to be that appreciation and actually that allowing that, because it is something that no one seems to complain about, the camera department having that, because even, you know, camera might decide, I want to show that wall that originally we hadn't planned to, and people adapt to that. So it's just an understanding that you need to give a bit of that freedom to actually get the very best out of it.
Exactly. I think that's probably it. You're right in what you say, and I think it's understanding that and getting what we can, the best out of it. Communication, as I said, I think is really, really important. It's a big thing on the film set for everyone. And the other thing too is props. You know, props department are so. I mean, I'm amazed nowadays, certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, that props seems to have gone to the wall. People just seem to be picking stuff off tables and moving it. I mean, ours was instant dismissal if you were caught moving a props, you know, without asking for it, and that wasn't a union thing. There was that as well. But so that's something that I find really, for me anyhow, when I work on a set, is to be respectful of everybody's area. If you're going to move something, ask. Yeah. Who's responsible? Ask them, or say, do you mind if I move it? I'll remind you to put it back. And you'll find that you'll build up a rapport with the person eventually. They'll say, yeah, move whatever you want and put it back, you know, as long as you, and I'll always say, I put it back.
Again, respecting other people's departments and boundaries.
Because they end up getting the brunt for it then, you know, and not you. If I come into shot, if I think I've dropped the mic into shot or clipped a corner, I'll call it. Yeah. It's the first thing up, really. I don't have that problem at all. But I want people to call it when it goes the other way. I think the other thing too is sometimes we get into, can we, like say for argument's sake, another thing for me is we say your performance level or my performance level is going to be high level. Because we're in a noisy environment. So one thing I'd love to have for the rehearsal is, if we've got a lot of extras, to create that noise, to give the artist that sort of level they're going to be working on.
Yeah.
And again, you having the headphones is a good plus. So what happens is we can get him or her up to that level. Then for the take, we drop that out and we'll put it, we'll record it and make sure it stays at that level. On condition, and I've been caught a couple of times, and this is another side of it, where in track laying, they put it back in the way we were going to do it initially. I've had one or two films where I couldn't believe what they did, with the crowd and held the crowd right down. So it sounds like this guy.
It's an interesting challenge, isn't it? Because on film sets, again, it's one of those things that, well, you never think about any of these problems until you're actually doing them on set. But say if it's a scene in a club or even in a cafe or whatever it is, when you have those noises, trying to get the actor's volume to a reasonable thing. And again, that's where your sound department is so important, because they are the people who will be best equipped to tell you whether that sounds natural or not. Because, of course, actors can get conscious. They feel they're talking too loud or not.
Yes, exactly.
You need someone who can actually give the nod and say, no, you know what, you're hitting the right spot. It gives them the comfort and freedom to be able to continue that performance.
I think that you're right in that. That's number one. While you're on that, about in terms of giving the actor comfort for what he or she and the way they're either projecting out those particular lines or saying those lines, is if they're actually speaking with a slight foreign lilt or put on an English or a German accent or something like that. What happens is that if they're embarrassed about it, they'll actually drop their level. So it's trying to encourage them to have the up.
Gotcha.
Other little tips that you got to think about that you've got to help with, because sometimes it is, as I mentioned before, about respect for the people on the crew. So we respect the director, what he or she are doing, and what happens is we're into a stage of doing a performance and it's not happening. We've gone 5 takes, the performance is not coming out on one of the actors. So what happens is, you're aware of this. We have worked together possibly, or maybe even not. I'll still do it. And I'll call it after the 5th one maybe, or 4th, depends on what the pressure is on the day, and just say, sorry, I had a problem. Now, in most cases, you've tweaked what I've done. I haven't had a problem. But what happens is you might give me a slight bollocking over that. And what happens is, and say it's the best performance we had all day. No, it happened. It was a lie. And what happens is hopefully the next take we get that what we were looking for. So we do help, and I'm not the only one. I mean, camera will do the same. One of us will take the hit and say, okay, go for it. Just to try and help. And that again seals friendships, it seals, a better understanding of one another. Other things that, questions that I've been asked in travelling through life, because I've lectured quite a bit as well, is, and I always had film schools, I had students out with me on shoots, and one of them, I remember at one stage, the art department came up and said, do you mind if we run a horse and cart through this? And we got to take 3. And I said, yes. And I remember the student at the time said, I don't believe this now. And I said, well, first of all, you've got to take it that it's a one-off shot. We're not intercutting. That's number one. And that helps a lot. And number 2, she's right. It looks bare. It looks nothing. So it's no point. I mean, I could say no, but why would I do that? Let's make it work for us all. You know what I mean?
Well, and I think that's the thing as well, isn't it? Like with the compromise, because you're understanding that that's going to make the shot better, which will make the film better. And that in the same way, if sound were to say, if you could tighten that shot by a small bit, I'll be able to get that boom right in over that person's head and I'll get you great sound. And it's understanding that, you're not taking away from the shot. You're enhancing the film. I think this is one thing. This is something that we'll ask on, numerous occasions sometimes. It also depends on the background we're dealing with, but we'll ask for those. Could you tighten up? Is it possible? Do we have to use 2 cameras here? I'll tell you what, if you get what you want, are you happy to drop the wide one and give us whatever way it is, So you just 1 camera on 1 shot, so we get in there a bit tighter and get that dialogue. There's a lot of overlaps. A lot of people think in terms of dialogue, and anybody starting off that overlaps. First of all, if you don't understand what the problem is with overlaps, is when you're doing coverage between close-ups or medium shots of, say, one person and then reversing for the other. If they overlap each other, normally the other person would be off mic. This is an easy problem to solve from the sound department. A lot of people think it's a sound problem. It's not. We just put up 2 mics and we've covered both sides. Yeah. But you let the director, make the director aware of where those overlaps are coming, because they might want to cut. In editing, it's where they're going to cut. And you can get very stuck with that. I think, again, everything you're bringing up on set and here in this podcast is a lot of the problems that sound can have on set are only going to become apparent to everyone else, or particularly the director and the editor, in post. And so, unfortunately, you can ignore those things as much as you want on set, but the reality is later on you'll have no way of fixing this. And editing with the overlaps can be a disaster if you don't have the coverage on the other voices, because it could be a beautiful thing to have that very naturalistic way people sometimes talk over each other, but if you can't use it, or if that person's totally off mic, you end up in serious trouble. You might not have a shot at all.
Exactly. And the other thing too is, I'd love to be on that person for that line or that person for that. I can't. I have to choose. So there's a number of reasons of why you keep mentioning it to a director. And then there's the other side of the coin too, where sometimes there's an argument and it actually has better energy if you let it happen, as long as a director is aware and happy to do that. And most of them, I guarantee, would be happy to and say, okay, well, I just make sure I got enough coverage. We'll cover it any way we can to make sure I can pop in and out. And then you might see maybe 2 or 3 cameras sometimes in those situations. I've certainly been there. There's so much. What else can I say? There's so much. Oh, car. We'll take the car. Can I bring up the car? So
recording in a car?
Yeah, recording in a car. Everybody has different ideas about how to record. There's no right way or wrong way to record. As long as you've got a reasonable, good quality recorder and a reasonably good quality mic, it's your choice. What you do is, but how do we make it work? What happens? We've got 4 basic shots in the car, right? How are we going to put it together? You look at the tacho, make sure the car's uneven ground. I think camera department want that as well anyhow. The other thing too is that you'd find that keep an eye on the tacho, that the car's always at the same speed no matter what shot we're on. So when
I've
you put
had
it
that
together,
problem before editing, not one of my own shorts, but someone else's, and just the sound difference in a car when it's on different roads, it's just shocking. Like, especially if you're cross-cutting between 2 people talking, either you're going to have to introduce a whole load of car noise to carry it over, but
to try and to keep that. Because one big thing about sound is that maybe a lot of people aren't aware. You should never hear sound. Number one, unless the director wants you to hear it one way or the other. That's one. And the other thing too is that that's what we work with all the time. We're always monitoring the background and trying to keep the background fairly constant and the dialogue constant within that. If there's any big changes anywhere, that becomes a problem, or background changes in background. So we're always trying to work with that. I think, again, it's back to communication. It's back to the first. I mean, the first is great on a, you know what I mean? You're a lot of people say you go through the first to get to the director. You do. I give every first his or her respect on day one, but it's easier sometimes for me to talk to a director because there's certain things that I'm looking for, the certain things I'm after. I don't need everyone to speak up. I need A and C maybe to speak up. If I could, just a little. I don't want them to speak up, which I'm just asking for a little bit. But sometimes under the pressure of things with a first AD or whatever, he or she can say, oh, no one wants everyone to speak up, and I didn't ask for that. And, the other thing too with that is that, you've got to respect your artists that are out there.
So just on that, so with the car, we basically discussed, let's try and imagine, say for... let's go looking at it from a low budget point of view. When in a car, you've got do you think with just a boom mic you can cover?
You can cover it with a boom mic, because most times where are you going to shoot? Are you going to shoot from the passenger side across or the back and shoot the driver, or because you can't drive unless you're on a rig and shoot at the same time? Now the thing nowadays, I suppose, is a lot of people are using the GoPros.
Yes.
Yeah. And the biggest thing with the GoPros now, we have to figure this out beforehand. And this is something we try and discuss beforehand the day of the shoot, because I take it in most cases, if it's a 4K system, you like to shoot wide and zoom in on post.
Yeah. I'm a big hater of that approach, because
you don't like that?
Well, no, but I see a lot of people using it because it sounds like an easier way to do. But I think what the problem with that is, even if I shoot a beautiful big photograph and then I punch later on, I haven't looked at just that framing and chosen what works best in that, and it's not a natural thing. I disagree with it as a sense of even framing, and I think it's the same with sound. Yeah,
I'm delighted you mentioned that, because I'd be only too happy to work with you. That's the thing that worries me, because you're saying, oh, listen, hang on, I really don't want to use radios in this situation, because as I said, I hate radios, but because they control you. But what happens is I could get a boom in there, as you said, if it was a normal camera, normal coverage. Yeah. But wide, how tight do you think you go? Oh, well, they'll allow us 20-30% extra, like we'd all would do, but I might be like this, and I might want to do that. So now you're sort of being forced into a situation you didn't really want to have to do.
But I think that's the problem, because this notion of giving yourself more choice in post, actually you're giving everyone less choice on set, and it's not. It sounds like a way of kicking the can down the road, but actually it's just kicking problems down the road. Really,
I think I agree. It's like most camera people would prefer not to use 2 cameras. They prefer to use one.
Absolutely.
Just from a lighting point of view, because now it becomes a compromise. And it's the same thing for sound. Keep it simple and it'll work. We can make it work. The other thing about the car too, if anybody, again, it's the small budget type film. If you shoot a car approaching you in the countryside with the wind blowing away from you, what it's going to do is it'll take the car sound away from you. So what happens is you'll ask the director to let the car run further. Well, if they go past camera, if he or she are not going to pan with it, they'll let the car go further than you want it to go.
Capture that too.
Because it doesn't make sense. That what you'll have to do is take the sound and slide it back to make it work. So, or the sound is coming towards you, and as the car goes away, it disappears quickly. So that's something just to be aware of. You know what I mean?
I think that's really because, like, you know, well, actually, we can get onto that in a moment. We're going to get onto radio mics because I know it's a big particular bugbear. But I think it's important because I'm actually amazed how much it's become the common parlance. Like, almost the boom seems like an old-fashioned kind of difficult notion. Before we kind of get on about the limitations of radio mics, can we talk about the strengths of a normal, like your shotgun mic or your rifle mic, like just the different sound? Like, I know it's very hard to describe these things, but I guarantee you if I could have the two microphones here and put headphones on someone, their eyes would open up a lot, like, because you're capturing, it's the life of I don't know.
I think it's, for me personally, and as I said, there's no right or wrong way to record as long as you come back with a good end result. But certainly for me, if I'm recording people, I really like what I call the ambient space around them, a certain amount of that. And we can work with it. It also depends on the voices. So what we do is we can get a really lovely recording. As soon as you add another mic or two or three or four, it's changing that. It's like, to me, doing an orchestral piece, 50 piece. Now, I've recorded a lot of orchestral stuff, and people think I'm mad. I go in with a stereo setup. Oh, you're mad. You should be using multi-techniques. You have a conductor that has just spent, it could be years, writing this music, putting it all together, getting into the center of it, and working out a balance for all these, and suddenly, we have multi-mic technique and they're going back and trying to mix it later. I asked a question, can I not get that with my stereo pair? If it's a 75 piece, okay, I do understand. I got to put one or two at the back just to bring it forward a bit, but I guarantee you I'll get that balance.
No, but it's an interesting thing, because even say when Rob was doing the sound for me on Chrome Wood, that was when we were doing the sound afterwards, the stereo mix that he gave me, because we were using radio mics at certain points because of the type of film it was, but the stereo mix, we were actually, for a lot of the stuff, that was what we were able to rely on. We only needed the separate stems when it came to a problem or a challenge or a difficult, that cause he was trying to make sure that was as usable in the first case.
I think that's, and the problem, nowadays we've got multi-track, so it's a lot easier. When it was mono days, you had to pull things down. You can imagine, because if I was wearing a mic, you were wearing a mic, I came close to you. As I was walking to you, you were being picked up on my mic.
Yes.
And I was being picked up on your mic. So, and it's putting me further away than I should be. And I've lack of presence on the voice. So there was all that sort of thing. But nowadays you can put it on multi-track. But it's still, there's something about a boom. A boom, to me, has a beautiful sound. It's a lovely sound. You can argue and say, okay, it might sound a bit squeaky. If you get an all dynamic mic, it's beautiful. The problem with the dynamic mic, it's too low on level. And when you push it up, it pushes up all the rubbish behind it with it. It's great for voiceover, because you can come in really close.
Makes us all sound very good.
So what happens is with the right type of microphone, like, and most of these you'll see these shotgun mics, but there's you're not putting it on anyone's clothes. You're not putting it underneath anyone's clothes. You might think to yourself, oh, great, look, I've got a cap. Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. And that will work well with it on the cap. The only problem is, are you outside and is it windy? And now you're in trouble now because, so there's all these other problems that go with it. The other lovely thing I love about the boom is the fact that, or the mic externally, the 416 or a shotgun mic, well, I use that for the want of a better word, is the fact that you can manipulate it, you can move, you can get people's head turns. If I've got a mic sitting down my chest, and I'll take it, it's about 6 inches from my chin, okay, you can imagine if I start talking about the roof, how do I sound? So what happens is I'll go from the roof. So this is basically how something sounds like this. So I'll actually talk to the roof, and now I'm talking to the floor.
And you've lost all the light, everything.
Yeah, and all these changes you hear on these head turns. Never mind the noise that goes with that. So all of those are, to me, how come we've made films for years, or I have certainly anyhow, and all of a sudden we can't do it without a radio mic now. I'm just saying a lot of people would call for the radio mics, even to the fact that I remember at one point, on a couple of times, it was like, so what we've got radio mics on this, and we want to record everything in stereo. And you're going, well, we don't record everything in stereo. We record all the dialogue in mono. We do ambient stereo and all that. Maybe we should get someone out. We'll give you a call. They wouldn't want to call you. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, you were going to give them a better end result. I just feel, let us get in there, give us the coverage, and we'll get it. Can I mention one thing that's really important, especially anyone starting off?
Go ahead.
There's 3 different types of directors.
Okay.
There's what I call the actor's director. He or she are looking for a performance. They know what they like, but they usually bring a crew with them that's going to give them what they like and say, this is the way I'd like it, this is what I'd like it to look. And you'll probably find the camera person, he or she, will suggest, how about, oh yeah, I like that. So, that's why they have it, and they can concentrate on performance. You have the other side of the coin, which is the technical director, and he or she has possibly done camera or loves camera, and everything has to look like a Rembrandt. But when it comes to the dialogue, and I've got it, I've heard it, I can't understand why the actors just don't read the lines.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a performance. Oh, technically, it look brilliant. And then you have a director that he or she has both. My chances, if it's an actor's director, I'm going to get close to getting 85% of usable sound. If I get a technical director, I'm actually down into the 70%. And if I get one that has both, I'm back up to about the 75-80 mark.
And because I think that's a really interesting point, and I think you're right, and I find it kind of strange as well, though, because if you're someone who loves the camera, okay, that means to me that you're someone who loves the process and the technical building of a film. But the notion that the camera is, I think if you really love film, you understand that sound is at least half, if not potentially more, actually, where these things come from.
It is. It is half and half. They done I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Italy there a number of years ago, quite a few years ago, they took a scene and they took a professional camera person and an inexperienced sound person and shot a sequence, and then they reversed it and took an inexperienced camera person and an experienced sound person and shot it, and asked people what did they think, and of course they picked the piece that had good sound in it. And that's the point about, you should never ever hear sound. And if you have someone inexperienced, he or she aren't aware of all those nuances. You think it's straightforward walking across a wooden floor in high heels with dialogue. Now, how do we solve the problem? Any ideas? So that's something that we're usually aware of. And there's a number of things that's going to happen here. We see a wide shot. So we do see the floor. Director, he or she has asked that we picked this area because of the floorboards. I just want to quietly go out and shoot myself. But anyway, but what's happened is you're hoping that, okay, we've already spoken about this. I would have had it. Are we going to go in tighter? Yeah, we're certainly going in tighter. And the dialogue would certainly, and this is again comes with experience. It comes with the editing process as well, that if it's going to be an emotional sequence, if it's going to be, it's not just straight dialogue or throwaway lines, you're going to be in there tight. You're going to be looking at those expressions in the face. You're going to see it. You're going to see the eyes. So you've got it. You're in there. Where it's a 50-50, I'm not sure you're asking, are we going to do coverage? Are we going to be in tight and in close? Once we get into a medium shot, we don't see the floor anymore. Can we run carpet down? The first question I'd probably ask is, I'll ask the camera person first about, I'm going to see if I can lose the heels. That's number one. Are you happy to lose? Depends on how many inches, and maybe we'll build the floor up, or we can drop the height and there's no problem. Then I'll go to one of the girls from wardrobe and say, do you think she'll lose the heels? I don't think you have a chance now. Yeah, she'd love to. She's only too willing to get into a pair of slippers. So that's 50-50. So I'll then go and ask, are they happy to lose it? But again, it's not just one person I'm going to, we've talked about the coverage of it. Then I've talked about losing to the camera person about losing height. You've got to be aware of that as well. I can't just bypass that and likewise. The other thing that's really important on set when I'm on that about communication, and we talk about that, I've always said that a sound person should be on the floor at all times, and you're always monitoring. What is the director? What is he or she doing? Who are they talking to? What are they saying? We're like earwiggers. I'm talking to the crew, not when they're out talking to friends or something like that. So either talking to the camera person, what is he or she saying? Are they changing the shot? Have they got something in mind? Are they going to do a slow zoom? Something I'm missing? Are they going to pan too? What about when they're talking to the actors? So, okay, I'll tell you what to do. This time, actually, why don't you sit and they say the line?
I remember you saying this before. This is where you swing in a boom to actually like have a little listen in on the chats that are going
a lot. Just so you, and I think that's really important that you must have that, because what happens is you then know what's going to happen. You've just changed something in the scene, but because there's a lot on your mind, you've walked past everybody and headed out towards the monitor or whatever, and suddenly you go, oh, hang on. So I'm back onto the other half, the recordist, or it's the other way around, whichever. Oh, listen, we're going to change that line. So, and then you notice, they didn't say anything to the camera person. Bob, listen, do you know that she's actually going to sit and say the line this time? Oh, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Mark, are they going to sit? Yeah, sorry, they're... Yeah, so there's all that going on, and that's really important. I think you've got to keep that in mind all the time. And I blew it very early on in the piece. There's a film called that Altman done called Images, and Susanna York comes out of a pantry and crosses the kitchen. Now I'm on a mechanical boom, so it's quite a fast move there. So you really got to anticipate. You should never anticipate as a boom operator, but that's my slap. What happens is, I did, because she came across the kitchen so far. But he said that, I remember he said to her, pause, say that extra line, and then go. Of course, what happened is I had gone, she said the line, I came back and she went. Yeah. So, and that's still in the scene to this day. I hate it.
But actually, that's a good point as well, because like, when you're directing, say, an actor, you're trying to get that natural flow of a scene, it can seem restrictive. It's the same as trying to, for a camera, getting someone to land on a mark. The same with dialogue, to try and say, well, could you put the cup down before you say that and everything? And you don't want to overly complicate a scene by giving, like, here's 20 different things you have to do. However, again, it's that understanding of that compromise and picking and choosing your battles. And I think even as a director, there's taking a certain responsibility that sometimes you're going to have to try and give way a little bit to your departments, like camera and sound, because again, it's all to try and give you the best product in the end.
The end, yeah, and it'll work. I mean, because sometimes we're thinking again how it'll knit together, and also, I mean, the other thing too is, and I don't know if you found that. Do you ever find some days you come on to do a scene and you're just stumped? You're thinking.
Just some days it's not there.
Yeah, and all you want is a kickstart. Yeah. Anybody help with this? Well, what about coming to? Oh yeah, and you're off and running. It's so you can all help one another.
And you're looking for that suggestion. Again, like I think that's even whether it's someone with the same experience with you or even a sound person with less. It's being able to give them a chance to say, what would you do here, or what do you need? And again, the same. Like I found. And it's again a case of a bit of compromise, but it's listening to my sound department and my camera department, and sometimes you'll be leaning towards one or the other, but trying to find a balance in between as opposed to just one or the other. Now, sometimes you are going to choose one or the other for certain reasons, but it's having that in mind and understanding the cost of that. And if you're a less experienced director and you're not too sure what that costs are, don't be afraid to talk to your sound department and ask them, how is that going to affect me?
I agree with you. I mean, this goes probably for any department.
Yes, absolutely.
Really that you talk to, because, that communication again, it gets back to that. It's how can we help you? We, even recently, going back probably a year or two, we were doing a sequence where it just didn't work. It wasn't working. It just wasn't clicking. And I remember the director saying at the time, do you know what I'd really like is an ambience running. I'd love the chatter here. I just think this will help. We'll just let it run. Run with the chatter. We'll cover it. Let's see, as long as we can control the background chatter.
Yeah.
And it worked. So there's that as well. Okay, you're putting yourself in the fire, but then you know how you can control it. And you're more or less saying, well, look, I'll control the background. And, if you're happy with that. So when we come around to do the cut, I'll try and match what I'm doing. So, but you're going to be stuck. You can't separate that.
Yeah.
The other thing too that's quite amusing all the time, we take notes as we go through, you can imagine, right? So not only when I was recording, I was a boom swinger for years, and then I recorded by default. Somebody dragged me into it and I recorded about 30 films, and then I decided I didn't want to do anymore. I'd much prefer boom swinging. I like placing the mic. That's my baby, that's my area, and that's what sound's all about. You haven't got a good boom swinger, you can't get there if the mic's not in the right place. There's no point in recording it.
The importance of the boom swinger, again, that's something that gets kind of lost in the same way that people get overly excited about what camera you're recording your film on. It's not that those things don't play into part, like what mics do you have for your film, but it's who's using them and how.
Yeah.
It's everything.
I think it's everything. I think it's how you use that, and it's the best thing. And also, I mean, you remember a lot of the time you're uptight, you're working very close to actors, so you're watching and being aware of the eye lines, you're being aware of their movements, because sometimes you're coming in underneath or whatever you might do. I worked with Kate Hudson, wasn't it? And for the first 5 days I was on the floor, lying on the floor. That's how I was introduced to her mum and dad, going home when they arrived. This is the guy that's been lying on my feet for the last 5 days. But you need to build up a rapport as well when you do that. I think that's really important. If you're using radio mics, I know at times we have to, and at times we have to do it, but as I say, I hate them. But again, it's the rapport that artists have, trust in you that you've got them switched off and not the whole, everybody's listening in while nothing's going on. Yeah. Because let's face it, with personal mics on, people forget, they have private conversations and so on and so forth. And, we have to be like doctors. We don't let it out and we don't want anyone else hearing it, so we won't open our channels.
Being professional, yeah.
Very unprofessional, I think. So we make sure that they are, nowadays we've got remotes to switch them off. We didn't always have that.
You can just switch them off separately for other people without actually you have to go up and turn them off. You can actually just mute them.
Yeah, you can do them with a remote now. You can.
That's very nice. I meant to actually ask you then, because you worked with Lenny Abramson on What Richard Did, Frank. Yeah. Did you work on anything?
I done a few things on a few days on Frank. Okay. It was sort of it was a catch-22, that one, in a way. It was someone I had brought into the business was actually asked to swing that. Okay. And he rang me and said, the problem with this, Noel, is the fact that the sound recordist wants me to do it, but Lenny wants you to come back in and done it, because there was a lot of things that happened out of... I'm not saying anything, don't get me wrong. The recordist on it was very, very good, and he'd always wanted me to go out and work with him to see what it was like. He was an ex-student of mine. He's now on the stage doing really well. So what happened is that he... it's just the inexperience. Sometimes it's like everything else. You build up your experience over the years, and you know what you can get away with. You know what you can work with. With the backgrounds, he was the one with the backgrounds and stuff like that. And I know what I can do, what you can't do. And I'm saying we can go with this, and the recorders go.
Yeah, it's understanding the limitations and what can happen here.
You can go. Don't panic. Yeah. And then, explained how we could do this. So there was a lot of things like that. So Lenny asked me would I come on to the other one, but you can't. It's the sound recordist. It's his or her choice to pick the boom swinger. And that's it as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. I've been there, recordists go off, travel overseas. Oh, we can't take the boom swinger. Okay, I want them out in 24 hours if I don't get the right person. That's the deal. Yeah. And I'm the same. When I had my boom swingers, I done exactly the same thing. So I appreciate that.
No, absolutely, actually. And I think that, what I'm trying to think is say on what Richard did then, so you were boom up on that, So for certain scenes, Lenny seems to like to improvise and everything. That's kind of the famous scene at the beach house where they're all kind of sitting around drinking, having the chats. How do you approach those kind of scenes? Because obviously that's a challenge. I understand why Lenny made that choice, and it made a wonderful scene, but obviously that brings certain challenges from your end. Yeah,
I think the ad-lib, in fact I was only asked about this the other day as well, how do we cope with this? I think it was reasonably self-contained. That's number one. Yeah. Number two, we had a few radios out as well as a backup.
So there was a boom operating during these scenes as well?
Sorry?
There was a boom operating as well?
Oh, you'd operate, as well. And what happens is you choose a mic that was a little wider. So it gives you a little bit more. So, okay, we might have got a little bit more background, but then we will make sure that we cover most people. But what happens is it's like, the thing about a microphone is that anyone using it or anybody that's going to swing a mic or put it in position, it's like a camera lens. Depending on the microphone you have, it's got a top and bottom frame and a left and right frame. Think about it. So what happens is that when you're trying to work out, okay, so we're going to have ad-libs here, right? Now, first of all, you've worked with the cast for a bit of time, so you have an idea who really wants to ad-lib anyhow, because they've been trying it all the way through. I was just thinking of Aidan Quinn in Collins. He used to want to ad-lib, and I used to say, please, Aidan, look, there's heaps of dialogue at the moment, but you tell me roughly where you think you might want it, and he might say there and there. I'll tell you what, if the mic gets close to me, I'll do it. And that was the deal. So, and I'd always go past him every time just to make sure. So it's the same sort of thing, because you do have a feel of who would do it. So you center yourself in that area, but your edges, if you like, of the mic, and you'd be using people on the edge. So if I have to go forced to my right, I'm using the left-hand edge. The mic's heading out that direction, but I'm really ready to move that way in case something happens. I think we use two booms as well, just to give ourselves a little bit of coverage, a little bit of air.
And I think, if now, I believe I heard Lenny talking about, for those things as well, this isn't just they just said, let's just roll cameras and go for it. There was a rehearsal process, and it was honed in, and so everyone kind of got familiar with it. Because I think nowadays there's people have quite a fondness of the idea of keeping things loose and improvised, but there's a certain level of professional organized improvisation, if that makes sense.
It is. Organized. I mean, you're so right. And I think it's even the area in it. Not everybody's wandering around and going outdoors.
Yeah, he understood that he needed to control it in some bit. So they're kind of sitting against couches. They're all tucked in together kind of as well.
In a sense. So it's nearly the half circle. So you've got visually, you've got it covered. And then the other thing I think on some of those, because we've done it more than once, we picked up one or two coverages, like a 2 or 3 shot on occasion, didn't we? Or was that
no.
Yeah,
I think you did
that. Yeah, I love that film. I really enjoyed working with Lenny.
It
was a pleasure to work with him. For a number of reasons. I was a great crew. I thought it was a lovely crew, and the DOP Dave Guerin. I knew Dave since he started off in the business as a trainee. So there was a lot of certain things. That was lovely about that, and I really enjoyed it, I must admit, and it was a bit of fun as well. You know what I mean?
It feels like he, and it is only from hearing him talk at a couple of events, he's very conscious of creating, like it's a creative space he creates, but he seems to have an appreciation, understanding for everyone, and wanting it all to come together. Like there's no sort of ego within this is just going to go this way.
No, there's no ego. He's very much aware of everyone around him. He's very much aware of trying to make that work in that space. He's also that one that holds up his hand and say, "I'm lost."
Yeah.
Give me a bit of feed up here, to help me off, to get me kickstarted. There was just so many different things. I mean, and sometimes you're really lucky that you get that opportunity. I mean, I must admit I've worked with quite a few directors that had that.
Yeah, the list is quite long. I was looking through your IMDb credits.
Can you imagine me here for years? But it's a shame when you walk away with a bad taste in your mouth because you feel we could have done better today. Yeah, because of A, B, and C, it wasn't going to happen. But it's funny, you walk away with, you take the responsibility. Even though it's not you could take the money and run. But if you're going to get into any area, I think in film, it doesn't matter what it is, you can't walk away.
No, you can't. And I do think that's such an important thing where people talk about after. Like, of course, you could admit there was challenges or restrictions, but at the end of the day, that is your work up there. Whether it's the sound, whether it's the picture, whether it's director or writer, and you kind of have to own that.
Yeah, I think you do. And and the other thing too that's always interests me is, and I've always said this to a number of people, is you don't have to particularly like or get on with the people you're working with, as long as you can work reasonably well together, if you know what I mean. So we can come out with an end result. I don't know how many people you worked with where we had very little time for one another, but at the same time, you'd still put in your 100%.
You can still create a great film.
And you'd end up doing 2 or 3 films with the same person. You can argue with a director continually throughout a shoot and think, well, never again. And likewise, they're saying the same thing. And then, a year and a half later, you get another call, love you to come back out and do it.
And what would be your recommendation? Say for as a sound, like say a boom operator on set or anything like that, because as you said, there can be those days that are hard, they're stressful, they're difficult, you might have been overridden, you might have gotten a hard time you didn't deserve, so you've gone home deflated and you're really just tired and exhausted. Like, how have you approached that when you come back onto set the next day? Like,
I think it's a fresh day, it's a new day, it's the start of a new day, you know what I mean? It's no point in feeling the bad taste only lasts for an hour or so, you know what I mean? It gets out of the system and you're back day for a new day and we'll start again. I'm always amazed at films. No matter how many you do, it's like deja vu. Yeah. I've been here before. And the last time I was here, it was a nightmare. How come today what's happened? It's similar scene, 2-handers, the sun is shining, the sun was shining, it was a same thing. But why was it so difficult the last time? So there's a lot of those situations. And I'm going to mention the other one. Probably I shouldn't mention this, but I will. The lovely thing about directors wearing headphones is not only to hear the performance and hear the voice, because I'm really into that about, as I mentioned earlier, about the emotions, and you should hear the voice crack, about how people deliver stuff, if you're into that sort of, really tight stuff. And it should feel warm to you. A few things are a problem. A director, you've got to be aware, is that, as I mentioned, is not only working hard and doing all of that, but also the other thing too is that he or she, it could be their script as well. They've read that script 1,000, if not a million times. They know the lines backwards. So what happens is that you have to be quite vigilant. Being aware when you're marking up the script as you're looking at it, as people are going through it, you're marking what's being said, because sometimes they skip a line and a director won't pick it because it's in his head, it's just gone through as normal, so normally what happens is you see the continuity. It's like 2 rabbits, looking up at one another. Did they? And sometimes nowadays with video you can go back and have a quick look, but you do a quick check that we have missed that line. Now, we had it on the last one, it was quite good, but, or whatever. The other thing, too, is that I know you're under pressure. And what's happened is we seem to be getting further behind. It's just one of those shoots where just between weather and, construction, we've had a few problems. There's been a few, generator had gone and we've lost so much time. You're trying to do a catch up. And what happens is I've got it like a pneumatic drill. We just arrived out in the morning, pneumatic drill in the back. I know you're not going to stop, or you're going to say, shit, I don't care. We just revoice. Otherwise, I'm further behind. So I won't say anything. I won't even mention pneumatic drill. But what I'll do is I'll have the trainee go out there with a radio mic and I'll blend a bit more pneumatic drill into your headphones than what I'm actually hearing. So you'll take them off and go, for Christ's sake. I lose my headphones, but at least I get the pneumatic drill stopped. So we have all these little things that we do to save. It's just putting more pressure on you while you're on it already. But then we all do the same sort of
We
thing.
do, actually. And so, reading scripts, important for the sound department beforehand, like being familiar with the script and everything. Would you go through everything? And do you mark it up with, because obviously it's very hard to know from a staging point of view, but I guess if there's sounds or anything, do you mark up for these things?
I don't really mark it per se, but what happens is I read the script first, right? And as I go through it, I put marks down. More so when you're recording than when now I read the script. If you're a boom swinger, you read the script and then on the day you read it once more. There's no point trying to learn the lines. You get the rhythm. It won't take you long. And it doesn't matter what language they speak, you still get the rhythm. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
When I was recording, I'd read it a couple of times, as I ran through it, I'd put down marks and then go back and try and figure out why I wrote those marks down. And some of them are to do with the location, some of them are to do with radio, some are to do with just the complexity of the scene itself and in a noisy environment. It could be in a factory environment and how much control, what sort of factory we're going to be at. So they're kept and marked till I meet the director. And then what happens is we'll sit down and talk about those. It's the first time we've met. And also I've got to take a certain amount of stuff with a grain of salt, if that makes sense.
Of course, that's how you know that'll be fine. I've been there, it's quiet. But actually, no, I think you're right, because that's something that'd be really important for all of us, and we can't forget it with having those previous meetings and having those sits and chats, and separately with your sound department and not just with a room full of people. Because I think from a sound operator's point of view, if you are having that conversation with the director and you're kind of, whether it's highlighting slight concerns and everything, you're already putting into their head an expectation from your end of your concerns and everything like that. And it means going into the film set that you're part of the conversation.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you're setting a standard early on.
I think that's the important. And the other thing too is to go to the readings, because we get invited to the readings, or we request sometimes, do you mind? Just sometimes it could be all artists that you haven't worked with before and you just want to hear what their voices are like.
Yep.
It's just a feel, just a rhythm of how they're delivering. It's just, there's a whole, you're not going to stay there all day, but it just gives you an idea. I think on one shoot, I remember we were going to shoot 2 cameras, and one of the requests I remember was that, okay, so we're medium and close-ups and not wide and tight. And no, it'd be all mediums and close-ups. And day one, shot one was wide and tight. And when I said, I thought you were going to do this medium and close-up, he said, well, you're the sound guy, sort it out. We went downhill from there. But that's what I mean about, where sometimes you just have to be aware that this might happen.
I've seen this as well, where people have been given, they've arrived in a room and the camera's already decided it's going to be a wide shot pressed up against the wall, and you're a boom operator, maybe even with no radio mics, and the actor's the other side of the room, and it's just, well, get it. And
you're going,
I suppose you bring it back to the cameras. That very important thing is to not forget that there's only limited abilities. If you restrict them, you're the one you're stopping them from being able to do it for you. You know?
I think you say in that situation that you said, say you want to stay wide, and you, for whatever it might call, whatever the scene might call for, and you say, no, I don't want to do any coverage on this. I really want it wide, and I want them down that far corner. What I'll do in that situation is, how many rehearsals are you going to have? Hopefully at least 1, if not 2. Hopefully 2. And on the second one, I'll actually say, listen, guys, I'm getting in frame. I'm going to record this now for the rehearsal. So we've got it.
Yeah.
Because sometimes what happens is again, the pressure's on. Oh, no, don't worry. You can do that later. You won't see the lips. I won't, in a lot of situations for wide shots, I know we can cover it when we get into the medium and close-ups. But in that situation, a one-off is usually sometimes that the film calls for it. and we've got plenty of time, or I don't have any time and I just think this is going to work, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'll get in for the rehearsal. A lot of the time I'll cover stuff in a rehearsal.
And there's even more options nowadays, though, as well. I think because, say, even for editing software at home, it's become a lot easier and more accessible. That, like David Fincher on the House of Cards things, where he loves to do his wide shots, but it's a locked off shot, and so he actually allows his booms to come right in over the people, and then they just composite them out afterwards. Now, of course, you have to have total control of light to be able to do that, but it's to be aware of these possibilities to you, and actually, if you can allow them that, why wouldn't you? Because like you've got these top end directors who realize how important it is to get that boom in there.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing too. And the other thing that was interesting, Pat, who came back from the States there last year, he was saying that, he said, you know, the interesting thing about it, Noel, is the fact that so many people are actually going back to the boom and getting rid of radios. He said, I can't remember, Blue, is that a series, Blue or something? He was mentioning quite a few series. He said, I went out there thinking, you know, oh, they've got radios all over the place. He said, they hadn't. Booms. He said, no, wouldn't touch radios. They're all gone. So a lot of people are actually going back the other way. And also it's giving you, it's like, you know, nowadays with some shoots, we'll get a zoom because we can do a lot with a zoom, but it doesn't really work per se. Okay, you can get some light shots. I'm not saying you don't. You can put them on a long lens and all that sort of stuff. But it's not as good as having a half dozen.
No, it's not. But again, I think I think people have gone through, and like with the digital revolution, people could kind of do whatever they wanted, and they felt this total freedom. And actually, not sometimes it created very interesting art, but quite often it created flabby and, you know, just not focused work. And I think people are kind of same with scripts and everything. And like, because when I'm working dialogue with crew, I tend to like the actors to put it in their own words, but they have to keep the very clear intention, because that line is there for a reason. Yes, and I think it's the same with sound and everything, that actually people are kind of realizing there's a reason to have these restrictions and that focus.
Exactly, yeah, because you can't let it out. You can't, you know what I mean? You do. It's like having a wild dog, you know what I mean? In a way, you've got to fence it off, because it is going to get out. It is going to attack someone. And, you know, again, the same thing. You're going to just lose so much because of that dog. You're going to lose so much if you let it go way out there. Yeah. So it's got to be reasonably contained, organised confusion, and really self-contained. But within that frame, there's so much you can still do, and there's so many things. And also to remember, anybody certainly starting off in sound, there's 4 sides to a frame, not just the top.
Yes.
And you've got to think of that as well. And when you're in noisy environments, to be able to work underneath, even though you might think that you could be 6 inches further away or more, because of presence, because of lack of background, you'll drop quite a bit of background. It'll work, you know. So it's just using the mics that you've got, learn the mics, understand the mics, know exactly what they can pick up and where they can go, and where you can slip into, where you can put a shadow. You know, people talk about, oh, Jiggers, I got a light shadow there. Listen, the light shadow you can drop into a dark shadow on the wall, and the mic's in the right place, and what happens is you don't move until the artist moves. As soon as the artist moves, you move, it looks like a shadow from the artist.
You get away with it, absolutely.
You know, I could name thousands of shadows in there along the way. It's a passion, and I think they certainly the latter films, since I went through the recording stage, I suppose, it's interesting because there's a lot of people you can help, and you know what I mean, in terms of you've been there, you've done that. Or the other thing too is getting all the electronic devices and thinking, oh, I'll switch all these in and I'll do this. Oh, that sounds so much better. And then suddenly going, oh, this is not working. It doesn't sound right. Hang on, give me the mic. Take the machine, plug it straight in, forget all that shit. How does it sound? Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the mic, nothing wrong with the machine. It's all the shit in between that you've been tweaking or playing with. So it's all these things.
There's a craftsmanship to that, though, isn't it? There's kind of an appreciation of just it's almost the simplicity like that, where if you're having a challenge with the mic, it's like, just break it down. Like, and I see that with the most experienced crew people on all the different departments, where instead of kind of going, oh God, I don't know what's going on, it's simply, let's just take a moment and let's work our way through it, you know. And actually it was funny, because I wanted to bring it up with you, because one day I was chatting to Rob Moore, and he was coming. I think he was going to meet you to pick up a little bit of gear, because him and a bunch of sound guys were actually just going to play around with some equipment, and it reminded me of how wonderful a lesson that is, that I think probably all of us are guilty of not doing enough of, is testing the limits of these things and trying different scenarios and everything like that, and not just on set, like learning and growing.
Learning it as you go. I think that we have, and we want to grow. We're growing quickly, but we'd love to bring in other departments. We've been growing from a sound point of view. In fact, last Friday we had a show and tell at my house. So it's basically, what have you got? What have I got? Let's have a look at your gear. What have you been up to? What have you been up to?
Yeah.
And a lot of new people came along. And in fact, I was only talking to one there before this, and he was saying, I learned so much on Friday. You know, and it's just,
Yeah.
When's the next one? So we'll have, 2 or 3 months, we'll have another one. But it's so important that, and a lot of people sometimes, I'm quite happy to help a lot of people along the way, and especially in sound. I think my wife worries in case anybody's really into sound, she's waiting for me to bring them home. Oh, by the way, I got another guest, another sound person. The only thing I ask, I don't want money. I'm not asking for money or anything like that in those situations. I'm quite happy to go and have a coffee, have a chat, and blah, blah, and help. Pass it on.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, pass it on. But we certainly want to involve camera, ADs, art department, props. Everybody, there's a whole crew out there, that want to play. I'll say one thing that I love about the modern day. It's so inexpensive even to hire equipment and go out and shoot a documentary or a feature. I love the fact you guys can do it. I considered it the first time, I suppose, in the early 70s. You can imagine what it would have cost me for stock. And a lot of the short ends I was getting for nothing. So, and then to hire the camera. So it was going to cost me.
How do you think? Because I think that's a really interesting point. Because the whole, say, the digital revolution, shall we say, it brought in all these abilities, and maybe not as many masterpieces as some people originally thought have kind of flowed directly out of them. But is that just because that was the early stages? It's like the teething time of that revolution, and it's actually grown up, and that people are actually, now a little less just overexcited about the access to things, and now people are starting to hone back into the craft of it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that's what happened. I think even yet it's still the same, but I think it's no different than a kid getting sweets. The more sweets you're given, the more you'll eat till you get really sick, and then you start cutting back and thinking, okay, we're going to make this last a couple of days. I think it's the same thing with when video came on board. I mean, at one point we'd have 20 minutes to go out and do an interview, and what do you call it? Two 20-minute rolls to do a 4-minute item. Whereas with video, we had 60 minutes plus 60 minutes and 60 minutes. So, I've been in situations where we've gone out for a documentary and shot for a week, and the editor looked at it for a week before she cut it. So, we've shot so much stuff.
Yeah.
So then I think you do hone that down. But I still think that maybe I'm getting old, but I do think that when somebody handed you a 20-minute roll and said, go out and shoot with that, you really have to plan it.
Yeah.
And you have to work out how you're going to do this. I'm not saying I'd say that with glee, I don't, but it's just giving you how would you put it? It's giving you a frame to work in. I can come back with something out of this, and I don't have to shoot that. Because who's going to spend time in the editing? You are, or you're going to pay for an editor and he or she.
Well, that can be the design, especially because money to shoot is so low these days, but even in post-production there tends to be even less allocated to that. And so if you end up with 10 times the amount of footage that you need, that actually just makes your job even more impossible there. And that's again where that discipline on set and having that kind of communication on set, I think you really need that, because it sounds wonderful that you think you're going into a post with everything, but it's really not. It's kind of doing you a disservice. Now, sometimes that can be handy, but I would say 8 times out of 10, if not at least 7, none of those bits are going to be used anyway.
Really, yeah. And it's and the other thing too is stopping yourself from, well, this might be helpful, or this might do. You've already worked it out in your head. You've spent ages laying it out. Let's keep to the storyboard, to what you've had in your mind. Occasionally something might pop up, you might get it, but you can't keep stretching out. It's like doing that documentary where you suddenly find, I'm doing a documentary on you at the moment. Suddenly, somebody you've just spoken to, I find really
interesting too, and so let's follow them too. Yeah,
and I'm thinking, which one is it?
Well, actually, and I get sort of the last section I'd like to get onto on the podcast before we move on is actually just saying sound in general, because it's probably only something, I guess, as every film you make, you kind of learn it more and more, and even from watching films, kind of appreciating how much the sound is building the scene as much as that image is. Like, even whether we're talking about Foley now, as well as music, as well as the sound recording from the thing, do you think, I'm trying to think a helpful understanding for directors and writers actually, when they're creating these pieces in the first place, to actually be able to write with sound in mind? I
think so, yeah. I think, in fact, I even remember this from a film called Quacks of Fortune, this actually coming up at one point with a writer. It was a Jane Wilder film, but with a writer saying, he actually was on the set and he was talking about it and saying, you know what I mean? It's funny, we should really spend more time in sound to be able to write the script with this in mind. But the other thing too is then we have to get the performance to go with that, because sometimes some performances sound really flat and you're a bit disappointed in some ways. That now, I also, don't get me wrong, I'm taking into consideration that sometimes directors will be pulling their hair out to try and get a good performance.
Of course.
I think the other thing too that can happen is that you're being offered a lot of money by an organisation on condition you take at least one or two actors that you suddenly find that is not working for me. And you think, well, there's your money gone to the wall because it's just going to kill you. I've seen that happen a lot as well. You're just so sorry for somebody that's been forced into that, thinking, oh, great, I've finally got a good budget.
Yeah, there's the money.
What do you want me to take? Not those two. Surely not those two or those three. So there is that as well. But then the other thing too for directors as well, that we are on your side. And I think that's the other thing. I think the crew will support you. And the other thing for the actors that we do, I mean, certainly I do. I think I have a tremendous amount of respect for the actors, and I think we have to have that. We do things we shouldn't do. I know that. By right, we should always go through you if we want to do anything. But if I know someone, I might want a little bit more level.
Yeah.
But rather than go through you, because I know them, I might say any chance. And likewise, they'd come to you and say, I'd love to drop on this one. You'd say, well, drop and let's see how far we go. And I'll tell you more during off camera, but not in your...
Yeah, it's not something I have to...
And I think we all tend to do that a little.
But because I guess, and I know it's probably more in the post-production side when we think about sound design, though, obviously very famous examples being the work that Walter Murch would have done on Apocalypse Now, or, even The English Patient. I remember hearing him talk quite interestingly about that, but just understanding how much sound can tell your story too. That allowing a shot of a person, whether it's a church bell in the background or even just hearing the tone of the room, that is a visual experience in a strange... I know it sounds strange to say, but...
It's so... in fact, Rob's mate, I don't know if you would have made him, Colin.
Oh, yeah. He sound mixed Crumwood.
All right, you know Colin. Right. The first time I met Colin was in Pulse, and he was going to do Tracklight, one of the students' films, and it was 10 minutes long. And the student at the time had said to me, oh no, do you mind coming in and having a look at this? I was introduced to Colin at that point. We hadn't got any further than say, hello, I'm Colin, I'm going to do Post. And I said, fine. So we started off, like you said, number one. And I'm saying, okay, what's in your mind here? What have you got? What do you see? What's the feel? This to me would be blah, blah, running in the background. This, that, this. Go inside. What are you going to hear inside the room? Okay. Doesn't say, yeah, what about this, what about that? Have you thought of inside, outside? So you sound from inside to outside. And it grew, it's growing. All the time it's growing. It's getting bigger. And when we finished, Colin went, I didn't know there was so much in this. Yeah. I love it. That was exactly what he said. So it's that thing about not knowing to knowing. And we do that a lot. I mean, I've had the opportunity, and I thankful because I've worked with quite a few directors, and some directors wanted me to track live for them, and I was only too happy. I loved that. A lot of directors I recorded for, I actually set in on the mix, because of their style. So I love it. There's so much you can do. It's so much you can create. It's
so hard to explain, I guess, and I think it's probably something I'll always be learning with, but it's just. Because, say, initially, I would have been probably overly defensive about don't put that in because that's not a sound that was actually there.
But it doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. It's just that would be my own limitations of connecting with that reality.
Yeah,
but
you don't.
The thing, obviously, you don't want to it's the cheesy horror film with the drip of water that comes from nowhere. But you can have these wonderful subtle things, and I think that's where sound people can understand that and help a director is. Just the certain sounds bring certain emotions.
I think they do, and I think we done it even with, as you mentioned before, with what Richard did.
Lenny's film.
We recorded a lot of sounds that we thought were quite nice. I done Controro in Italy, the same thing. I went around with a. It was just the way it went. That the recordist was. He concentrated on recording and getting that right. I swung it, but I done all the dealing with post, and I recorded a lot of post sounds. And I went out at night. And I just because it was a bit of horror in a way, but all these beautiful, even taking a church pew and moving it in one of the old Italian churches, and just that sound. Yeah. And then what you do is you reverse it and slow it and take it the other way. So there's all these different things that you can play with to. And again, it's when you say to people like, okay, we're sitting here at the moment, we could put ourselves in London City and we'll just put Big Ben. But the problem with a lot of people, they actually recorded it up close. It's like it's sitting right here beside us, whereas you want it away out here somewhere.
And that is a different sound than actually recording close and turning it down. It's not the same thing.
Listen, that's something about dialogue that kills me, about, recording, even revoicing and stuff like that, where people bring the mic up here and then trying to recreate that. You can. You need space. You need air. Even when I talked about doing sound only, was saying that the mic has to be in the same place. We create that feel. It's got to be, it's just got to feel right, and that doesn't feel right. Yeah. I've been playing the scene here all day, and all of a sudden I'm going to play it here, and you're going to pull it down. It's nowhere near it. And also you're giving your double mixture a nightmare. So there's so many. I mean, it's something to consider. It's something we talk about quite a lot. It depends on the director. Some directors don't want to think about it till later. Yeah. Some do, or some are really, I like that. Could you come to think could we play something in and have a reaction, or do something, or create something? So there is a lot of that. I love doing that. And also it's interesting that how, what people don't hear. That's what I was saying about don't hear sound. You should never hear sound. But it was an exercise I had for a long time. And I keep saying I must recreate it when I was in Australia, because I lectured there as well. And I recorded, a room with, looks as if somebody had a heavy night. And all of a sudden, you can see just the room. It's a wider shot. Curtains blowing in the wind. You can hear traffic outside. Next minute there's a smash. Then you can hear the sirens and all that shit coming. And what happens is he goes and closes the window because of the noise. And then, of course, you can hear the fridge and the tap. And then switch pulls out the fridge, just stops the tap, gets in. Then you can hear there's other noises going on around you and footsteps on the stairs. So he's in an apartment. So you're getting more information all the time. The interesting thing about it is that when you start, eventually gets out and opens the window, puts everything back to the way it was. But it was all those sounds are already there. But then everybody can now hear them because you brought them. But it sounds so natural. What I'm saying, when you're sitting back just accepting it. And not.
But actually, no, because what I'm trying to think is because actually, that's another thing about storytelling through sound. Because say even what could look like a simple shot of someone standing in an apartment or whatever like that with the window open and the sounds in. But say if this person's looking to get some privacy or can't handle it, just them closing the window and the change in sound from hearing all that to quiet, like that tells us something. That's a way of it's and not only that. I mean, even the other thing too. We just add to that and let's go. We want to create a sound for you, because I don't want to always see you, but I want to know it's you. You're around the corner. So we'll give you a sound when we see you. It could be a squeaky shoe. It could be a bracelet you carry. It could be a neck. It could be something. So it means we don't have to see you all the time. We can just hear you. It's like, I think somebody said to me a while ago about how could you, if you done a car for a film, what would you do? Would you just try and record it in the street with all the things? I said, I'd have a car with a different sound. So as soon as you hear it, you think, oh, that's their car. So and that's that there. So. It is, and that's a way to think about your audience as well, because it's the same way that we I know if it's someone who I'm familiar with coming near because they have a sound, or just the way they walk down the stairs or anything like that. It's just something our brain associates, and I think the audience enjoy having some quick connection that allows them to understand where they're at. And sound is a great way of being able to actually do that. I think
sound is brilliant. I love the fact of what you can do with sound, and the lovely thing about it is you can create anywhere in the world. Like put you inside, put you in a scene somewhere, depending on what accents, depending on what bells you're hearing, depending on what sound you're hearing. You can nearly put yourself in, shoot here, put yourself anywhere else in the world with one or two.
And is there any films particularly that stand out for you that when you watched that the sound themselves were...
Images was really nice with Altman. That was really nice as Annie York. He done a really nice job on that. And the sounds that were in that. But then there was a lot of chimes in that as well, which are quite nice. The car had chimes, the houses had chimes everywhere we went. Plus it had... he just added a lot to it. It was very simplistic, but yet it carried quite a lot, which I quite liked. I quite liked those sounds. But again, I didn't have any role to play in that per se outside of we recorded it. That was it. I swung on it. But outside of that, no, not really. I mean, there's very few and far between that I've seen that I liked the overall production. Some are great sound-wise. They've done a really nice job. But because of performance have let it down or
it's really a blend of all of them. It's unlikely you're going to have...
isn't it? Yeah. I think it is such a blend. And performance to me are, I feel very strong about performances. And I just, sometimes you feel, I don't believe any of this.
I find that, the acting, even nowadays, where... we're beyond the 70s, kind of the reinvention of acting where it became a bit more real and went on. We're at a place now where I'm quite surprised with how in some films what I feel are incredibly flat kind of performances are being put through as just generally safe. And then I see other ones, because like for me to believe any of it, I gotta believe that person, even in the most unreal film, like
exactly.
A horror or a fantasy film. It's just that person has to be a real person in it. Yeah,
they have to bring you. I agree with you. And as you said, it doesn't matter if it's a load of shit. Basically, you still have to believe it. You know what I mean? And you have to believe that character, that he or she are playing that role. And I think that, for me, carries a lot of the films for me. But I've got to feel it in. I got to feel it in the voice. And then you will say, it's like looking at somebody's eyes directly, you know what I mean?
It actually, that's interesting, because like say, like a close-up of someone's eyes, or not even actually, just if the performance is good, someone's eyes can tell you so much. But that's where I think with sound as well, because I remember an emotional moment that really kind of caught me off guard was at the end of Captain Phillips. Without spoiling things too much, but like a really wonderful film. Tom Hanks at the end, there's a bit where he's kind of been taken care of after the whole incident, and I don't even think he says any words in it, but he lets out a kind of a half sob or something. But it's a breaking of a voice, whatever that, and that little sound cut through me like nothing else could. And that's where having that sound is incredibly powerful, because that, for me, there was a truth in that sound.
I think this is the thing, probably, and you probably put your finger on the pulse in a sense, that this is the thing about performances, isn't it? There's sometimes within performances, there's a lot of those little tiny moments that people won't hear if it's not done right. In terms of recorded right. If we get the opportunity to record good performance, good actors put in certain things that we can miss. Not only visually, but also audibly. And that they're the things that you like. As you said, it could be a sigh, it could be a breath, it could be, a cough, it could be, a nervous cough. It all relates.
But absolutely, and it is, because like on a really good performance, and that's where sound, and whether sometimes that's an ADR type thing afterwards, or whether it's something captured on the day, I think it is those moments in a performance, because if someone's really feeling the emotion of the scene, just even the way they breathe or stop breathing at a certain moment or anything, if that's picked up, that for me conveys much. Like, I know someone is hurting by the way they don't do something, as opposed to them actually shouting and everything. And if you can catch that sound and that little look,
exactly,
that's the power.
I think, I agree with you. And it is made up of moments, isn't it? Really. And if you can capture those, and we know that for a fact, that if you get a good performance, both whether it be bad sound or bad vision, you will still go with that performance, because it can throw so much strength. We've seen that as well. The other thing, where it comes through all of that. And you
absolutely.
think, I believe this person. I don't care if it sounds a bit shitty or it looks a bit dark or some, slightly out of focus. It works. And the scene worked for that. And to have the nerve to do that. Saying live with the performance. And have to put up with all the, the abuse you might get from your producers or whatever else. And you try to fight to save that.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Really, actually, everyone's fighting to try and capture what that actor is doing on the day. Really, and I think it's the same as the director's doing as well. We're all just fighting to try and get that performance there.
I think that's what it's about, isn't it? And that's why I think I love working so much with actors, directors. I think I've always enjoyed that, and there's always been a drive in that. I think to get. I'm not saying that you switch off, but it's even like when you do a scene, if you just observed. I think boom operators are very good observers, and most boom operators will tell you the same, because you can see. I don't wear headphones. I know by the distances where everything can be. I can hear. Well, not so much now. I'm deaf in one ear. Can't hear the other. But what happens is you're a good observer, and you can watch what's going on the set. You watch what the people are doing.
For people who are listening, then, like at the moment. No, where are you teaching, or where like?
I teach quite a few. I teach here Film Base. I do some work in Film Base, lecture there weekends. I do Pulse. I do a little bit still in Griffith. I'm trying to cut it down a bit. And I do Fosterley and IADT. So I do quite a few of the colleges. And then there's a few people that want to come along and do private, like one-on-ones. But it's interesting. I try and bring people out on set.
Yeah.
Let them talk to the sound department if they're interested. I mean, they don't have to be. I'll show them the whole set to see how everybody works overall. And people think, sometimes we're in a panic, and you go and look at. I'll take Red Rock. Can I use that as an example? Even okay, it might be rip shit and bust 30 minutes of screen time a day, but they're still ending up with a reasonably good result, I think, for 13 minutes a day.
Undoubtedly.
And what they've got, their limits. They're a lovely crew to deal with.
I'm shocked at the way they turn around episodes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The directors working on it, like, it's spectacular when you look at the final content. content compared to and people can criticize, but even compared to stuff that RT or anything are making, it's right up there, and they are pushing themselves to the absolute max. But you don't feel that on screen, I don't think.
You don't. That's the point. You don't, and that's why I've got to hand it to them. And also, they're a great bunch of guys, guys and girls. I mean, they put a lot of effort in, and I just think, and it's a nice set to go out on, and they take on trainees, through.
I think they're looking for people now, actually. So for anyone who's kind of interested, there's nothing like learning there, because actually the first time I met was actually it must be over 10 years ago now, but it was some film based course to do. I think it was directing for the Screen with Vinnie Murphy, and it was just one of the days you came in to talk about, and actually maybe I did a separate one on sound, but I remember that day where you brought us out on the streets with booms and everything like that, and kind of forced us to confront the realities, and actually just talking even about the ballet, almost the dance of the boom operator, and I'd never kind of seen it as kind of a graceful kind of art form before, because you kind of presume you're just lunged there, just holding the boom over, but it's not. It is as much.
As I always say, it's Alexander method to stand up straight and Tai Chi when you move the boom. So it is that sort of move, as you do it. But
that fluidity is actually incredibly important though as well, because even of how the sound, so even if you were slightly off something, you don't juddering from one person to the other. It's actually everything is smooth pace.
It's like a camera move. It's the same sort of deal as a handheld camera. You're just doing that ease backwards and forwards.
Yeah, and it's just for that reason, even though cause I've never recorded sound on a film or anything, but I do think whether you're a director, even as a writer actually, or any kind of crew things, the same way that you trained up, you got to try different departments. I recommend even doing a small, even if it's a weekend course, something, or if you know a sound man or anything, even actually spend a little bit of time with them, get those headphones on. I just think there's so much, it will give you so much more confidence on set and a much better appreciation of what you have to work with.
I agree with you entirely. I think I only became aware of that because I started lecturing in 75. I lectured for 5 years primarily and then went back into the industry and kept my hand in with lecturing. But I used to bring students out on the set. But it also made me aware to let other people listen, because I never did be up to that. And then I'd suddenly go, do you want to have a... Yeah, I'd love to chew, because I couldn't... Oh my God, you can hear them. I can't believe it's a whole new world in here, you know what I mean? So, it's teaching people to be aware, and just have a listen at what we hear. You all think we can control everything and turn things down, and, we can use radios and we can sit back here and mind our own business and not do anything. We got to be in there. We've got tables where you got paper bags. Or when do you want the messages to arrive in a paper bag with dialogue? Come on, can we now use a...
Well, there's very few directors I know who would be very happy to not look down the lens at some point, or some shots, or not look through a monitor. And I think it's kind of the same with sound. If you value that, you're kind of going, well, how could I let the cameraman film all day long without me ever seeing what they're filming?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the exact same with your sound.
It's exactly the same thing. Listen, and I think we'll try and encourage directors to use headphones as much as it is possible, just so you know what it's just to. And also the other thing too is that it brings you closer to performance in a way, because it's bringing the voice up here. Yeah. So sometimes what happens is, certainly I've found in the past, where it hasn't worked. Yeah. And when you stand back a bit, there's so many other things that's distracting you that you think it is working, but then put on the headphones and you feel it's a bit flat, isn't it? It's not working.
But see, that's what you're capturing. It's not what you're hearing in the room with your ears. It's what's there, and I think that's an important thing.
And we're not doing anything unusual. We're just recording it as it is. Yeah. We brought everything closer than it is.
Well, it's the same way a scene can look very funny if you're just standing looking at 10 people acting, but if you look through the lens, it may not be funny.
That's the other side of it.
You just realize that I'm only capturing this moment of reality, not because our brains and eyes are incredible at pulling in all this information, but the camera and the sound are not capturing all that. They're more focused. And that's a great thing as well. You just have to learn to work with it.
I think, and I think you've got to understand it and know it, don't you? You've got to know how you're going to put it together. Yeah. The other thing too is that at times any background noise that might jump up, like school kids get out or something, it's just one of those things. We've gone longer than we should have in this location. We can't take the kids away for 10 minutes, or we have to wait 10 minutes. We haven't got time. It's for us that it's far enough away. Check with the director. You happy with this in the background? Yeah, I wouldn't mind. We'll do a quick ambience of it. As long as they're not up in your face, they're down there
actually,
somewhere.
That's another
one.
But
it is a distraction if we try to...
Letting your sound people get Atmos tracks.
Yeah. Listen.
There's no... Because I know we have to wrap this up in a minute, but that is just... I can't tell you how important that is. That is not an inconvenience. That is just the most... And even if it's a sound that you think we're probably not going to use that take or anything like that, without it, you can find yourself afterwards looking and saying, it's a great take, and I can't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So
now, I think, yeah, exactly. It's so many times. And we don't ask just for the sake of asking. We're asking because we know it'll work.
And most time, it very rarely takes that long, unless you've a massive amount of scene you need to be covering. Like, you're talking a minute or two of just quiet. This is not...
We even say 30 seconds, hopefully we get a minute. And even then, people are going, what?
Yeah.
Or the other one is, can you still hear the plane? Can you still hear the plane? And you're going, can you hear with your ears? Yeah, well, I can still hear. The mic is no brain. The other thing I find really quite humorous, I'll just mention that as well. You get used to writing notes. Director informed, director told, director whatever. You get to a certain point, and then I used to record a lot of mine. So, and then it could have been a couple of the films I'd end up track laying, and a director be saying, what the they get to track laying and go, what happened here? I mean, what's all the sound? I go, look at this, look at all this background. You're saying it's on the sheet. I never said that. Well, hang on, I'll just play back while I record. Or some of them come out the next day. Who was it? Joel Schumacher came out on Veronica. I remember to Kiwi and myself. We were partners, and he comes out and he said, I read your sheets last night, you guys. For Christ's sake, you really slayed me, didn't you? But it doesn't matter. It was a laugh. Yeah. But I understand as well the fact that you get sometimes a bit frustrated sometimes because you feel, well, we're nearly there. But then, you have to accept at the time there's other pressures sometimes. And, we get to a stage where if there is a problem and it continues and there's lots of dialogue to be real, we'll go to the producer. If the producer, he or she says, Mark gets what he wants, well, we're out. Yeah. And we have to buy that, because you've got a talent and it's going to work no matter what way it is. Okay. So we have to buy it. Or, where is it? I need to talk to him now. That's the other side of the coin. Yeah. So that's as far as we will take it. But there's nothing malicious in it. All we're trying to do is make a good end result for you. But sometimes with the pressures that are on, you're thinking, I'll be lucky to just about get this on camera, never mind.
And that's the stress, else. Yeah. And I do think that's the take home from all of this stuff. It's sound. It's the same as all other departments. Like, if you say nothing, you're not part of the conversation and you're better off being there. And if the director or whoever, producer, first AD decides to overrule that, that's fine. But exactly. Part of your job is to actually say that. And also to understand that sometimes, whether it's camera or sound people, if they're annoying you or you feel that they're annoying you, understand that actually that is really why they're doing it. It's very rare I've actually met someone who is maliciously doing that just because they're a bollocks. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Two things I learned in the industry. Never ever take anything personally on the set, and time is money.
And on that beautiful note, Noel Quinn, can I thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I think it's going to be really great for people to hear, and I'm sure there is probably, ways of contacting you out there if anyone else wanted to.
They can, and you can contact me through Filmbase if you need to. People will have mine, and I'm quite happy for you to have my email. I mean, unless you want it.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm sure, through Filmbase, you can do it wherever you can get it on those things. But it's just, don't be afraid to, don't just not for the sake of having a chat, but don't be afraid to reach out, because I've been amazed at how much that has helped working on different projects. There's always a tendency, I wouldn't want to bother or anything like that. If you're serious about what you're doing and you're not half-arsing it, there are so many people out there with so much experience who are actually willing to at least offer you advice. They might be able to work on your film, but they can point you in the right direction. And if you don't send that email or try, you've no idea.
Exactly, and they will, even if you want to buy them a cup of coffee, and sit down for an hour, you'd be surprised.
But it could save your film, especially if you're on your first couple of short films or anything like that. Like, these guys can teach you things that will mean your film will actually come out and be usable, and they could save you so much hassle, because you were going to kill yourself making those films. You may as well make sure you got the best advice. Noel, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Mark.
Cheers.